I mean, when we inhale a scent, we are inhaling a substance. And even if you use products exactly as they're directed, even if you were to wear a mask or gloves while using them, you inevitably are going to breathe them in. Now, we are very resilient as a species. We can put up with a lot. But eventually, even very healthy and resilient people their bodies will reach a point that they'll say that's enough. I'm tired of warding off these irritants. I'm just going to react to them. Um, the other thing you're going to have to get used to when you're just starting out is that things are going to smell different, not bad, just different. We have this idea that in order for my house to be clean, it's got to be so nose scouring, makes your eyes water. That's not the case. If something is clean, that means there's nothing there. And if there's nothing there, then it's not going to smell like anything.
So, Staten Islander News is here today with Lisa Bronner, granddaughter of Emil Bronner, otherwise known as Dr. Bronner, and the founder and question answerer for Going Green with Lisa Bronner. Dr. Bronner's was founded in 1948 by Emanuel Bronner, a third-generation master soap maker from a German Jewish soap-making family. He used the labels on his superb ecological soaps to spread his message that we must realize our transcendent unity across religious and ethnic divides. We are all one or none. Still family owned and run, Dr. Bronner's honors its founder's vision by making socially and environmentally responsible products of the highest quality and by dedicating their profits to help make a better world focused on the principles and philosophy of all one. Among the company's mottos is, "We can only truly prosper if we contribute to the prosperity of all." Emanuel Bronner believed that a company has a responsibility to quote, share the profits with the workers and the earth from which you made it. His son Ralph called this approach constructive capitalism, and they practice it in every aspect of their business, from the products they make throughout their supply chains to their dedicated activism and charitable giving, to their relationships with employees, consumers, and suppliers. It's important that their products have a real and positive impact on the people and communities worldwide that make them. So Lisa Bronner is the granddaughter of Emanuel Bronner, otherwise known as Dr. Bronner, and her family is now in its fifth generation of soap making. She started Going Green as a way to answer lots of questions all at once. She used to answer all the questions people emailed to Dr. Bronner's. And after a couple of years of individually answering, quote, "Can I use the cast style soap to wash my face, hair, baby, dog, cat, llama, chicken, car, carpet, wood floors, tent, boat, super grubby wool socks," and numerous rounds of, "Do you have a recipe for laundry soap, dish soap, mopping, diapers, shampoo, and longevity?" she decided that posting answers somewhere public would be a lot more efficient. So she started writing about the many, many uses for Dr. Bronner's products. Along the way, she began learning even more about this thing that is called green. She found there's a lot of junky info out there that needs to be debunked, but there's also a lot of really important info. She tries to cut through all that at Going Green to make good info easy to find. So while she's continued posting general tips for simpler and healthier living, tips for home care and personal care, anecdotes about the Bronner family and behind the scenes at Dr. Bronner, she also wrote the book Soap and Soul. This well-researched, well-indexed book shares most of the secrets and recipes that Lisa has compiled over the years on her blog at Going Green, all in one place, sorted into easy-to-find and use chapters. For those who have not read her book, it is heartwarming and hilarious, while at the same time being useful and insightful. You can learn how to clean every room in your house, as well as your clothing, laundry, and so many other things. And good afternoon, Lisa, and welcome.
Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here.
So I guess the first question that we have is, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, as you said, I've been doing emails, I've been writing a blog, I've got some social channels, but the information is scattered all over all of those fronts. And so I wanted to have one place that was a go-to, that people could get the whole story all at once, both the recipes and how to use the products, as well as the important, at least I see it as the important science behind all of that, to know why all of this works and why it's important.
Oh, awesome. And why do you feel that green cleaning is important?
I think that the everyday decisions of what we surround ourselves with, our habits and our routines, they add up to a tremendous impact on our life. And things that are so close to us, they're often invisible, such as what we use to clean our houses. We just don't analyze them. We don't think about them. We make decisions about them based on advertising or smell or cost or packaging, rather than looking at things like ingredients and impact on health. And so I mean, green is a very nebulous word. I acknowledge that, even though I use it. But the idea that we can use products that do what we need them to do, clean our surfaces, clean our houses, with no harmful side effects, no potential harmful side effects, and just leave everything a lot simpler, a lot safer, and a lot less expensive too.
Right, right. And what are some of the personal health and environmental benefits to using green type of cleaning products like homemade and stuff like that?
Well, one of the most well, to me, one of the biggest problems with conventional cleaners is the fumes that they give off. Um, Oftentimes, they're marketed based on their scent. But what are they? What are those scents? And what is it that we're inhaling? I mean, when we inhale a scent, we are inhaling a substance. And even if you use products exactly as they're directed, even if you were to wear a mask or gloves while using them, you inevitably are going to breathe them in. Now, we are very resilient as a species. We can put up with a lot. But eventually, even very healthy and resilient people their bodies will reach a point that they'll say that's enough. I'm tired of warding off these irritants. I'm just going to react to them. And then, of course, there are people that already are sensitive to what's in our air, people with asthma, people with other respiratory issues. And so that's one of the primary reasons I think green cleaning is important for everybody, because we can't not breathe, and we're going to breathe in the air that's in our spaces, even if you weren't the person cleaning, even if you just live there or are visiting a space. And so one of the biggest parts of making your own cleaners is not having volatile organic compounds, is the fancy word, VOCs, that end up in the air, not having fragrances which are designed to be durable. And durability is not a good thing. It's like the opposite of biodegradable. We don't, if they're durable, that means they stick around. And even if you breathe them in, they stick around. And so our bodies can't process them and can't break them down. So when you make your own things, you can avoid all of that, and you're not adding the components that would be problematic.
Right, right. And can you please explain the to-do list, why you use it, and also do you use to-do lists?
Yes, I am an avid list maker, and people who know me well know that giving me a good notepad is a great gift. I love notepads. I love lists. So yes, to-do lists. We all know what to-do lists are. We lists of intentions and goals and what we're going to do in a day or a week or a year. A to-do list was something I came up with. I talk about it in the book. And it came up as a bit of a psychological rescue for myself in my early days of motherhood, when every day seemed to go off the rails. I would have a to-do list at the beginning of the day of what I was going to accomplish. And at the end of the day, like, none of that happened. And the worst question my husband could ask me was, "What did you do today?" And I'd be like, I have no idea. And then it would feel like, oh, I must have done nothing. Well, I knew that wasn't the case. And so I started writing a to-do list at the end of the day of what I actually did. And maybe I did something from the to-do list, dishes, laundry, whatever. But oftentimes it was, handled this mess, took care of this, unforeseen situation that arose. Or maybe it was something like I sat down and I read books with my kiddos for a while, or we went on a walk, or we went on a treasure hunt in the yard to find this or that. which are very worthwhile and valid things to do. And writing them down at the end of the day just helped me to see, my days are full. I did do something, even if it wasn't what I intended. And so the to-do list, I still use them. I don't have young kids anymore. My days are a little bit more my own. I do get a little bit more done for my actual to-do list, but there are still days that don't go as planned, and a to-do list just helps me kind of corral everything and bring it back together. The great thing about a to-do list is that everything on it has already been done.
Right. And then the next question that I had, I was actually going to read kind of the quote from your book, which is actually from the introduction. And you had mentioned after this that you would kind of like explain how you got from there to where you are now. So, but I was just wanted to kind of just ask about that again. So in here you said, it's on page 10. My own initial foray into personal home management came later in my life than my son's. For a long time, it didn't go well. Home care was not something at which I instinctively excelled, and there was always something else I'd rather be doing. I've heard of people who simply can't rest until every object and every speck of dirt is in its proper place, who get pleasure from the act of cleaning, but that's not me. While I very much like for things to be clean, I wasn't so fond of the process of getting there. For too long, my strategy toward mess and dirt was maybe if I ignore it, it'll go away. So I just wanted to ask, what was your like aha moment that changed you from someone who thought that dirt would disappear if you ignore it to someone who is an expert on green cleaning, and where and how did that change occur?
Yeah, I have to confess, it was way too late, you would think. So the moment it references about my son is that during the pandemic, when my son was 15, he moved into a tent in the backyard for a month. A month. And that was really good for him. So when I eventually established a home of my own, I was not tidy and not very clean either. It really wasn't until I had children. And I remember thinking, I don't want them to grow up thinking chaos is normal, that a home should look like a wreck. I want them to have, they might not be instinctively tidy either. They are my children, but I want them to think of normal for a home as being, orderly, clean, healthful. And so it was really my kids that motivated me to figure out how I was going to keep things, tidy and clean, which are not the same thing. Tidy and clean are quite different. And so they started me on the journey towards better home management and better understanding of personal care and house care. So because I just didn't want my kids to grow up thinking chaos was normal.
That's awesome. So now the next two questions I have are a little bit more technical, just because the following two common household cleaning chemicals, I didn't see them on your chart and I didn't see them mentioned in your book. And there's something I use. So I wanted to know, is it safe or effective? Because I know like it could be safe, but like with, I think it was Epsom salts or something, it's like you just made water.
That's hydrogen
Yay
peroxide.
for you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So is it safe or effective to combine Bronner's soap with ammonia?
Yeah, so you're referring to a chart I have in the book about what can you mix,
Right.
because that was a whole category of questions that I got and still people are asking me new things about what can you mix. I got one about can I mix aspirin with Castile soap, and I thought I don't know. I had to go look that one up. You can't, because aspirin is salicylic acid. And the issue with most of reactions that happen is you have an acid-base reaction. You might think back to your whole, baking soda and vinegar volcanoes from science class. So soap is a base. It's an alkaline pH higher than 7. Things like vinegar, lemon juice, salicylic acid, those are all acids, and you're going to just have a very simple acid-base reaction. So ammonia is also an alkaline. It's a higher it's a stronger alkaline than soap is. I mean, soap can be a range. Dr. Bronner's happens to be around 9. That's not terribly strong alkaline. Ammonia's around 11.3. So there's not going to be a reaction between soap and ammonia. I will say, though, that ammonia on its own is an irritant, a breathing irritant and an eye irritant in its vapors. And so I'm not a fan of recommending ammonia for that reason. But as far as the combination with soap, they do not react with each other.
Okay, fantastic. So, because usually I would use that in like laundry or whatever, and so I wouldn't want it to like have that kind of a reaction with the soap, like that you had mentioned for something else. I forget what it was that clogs your pipes if you put them together.
That's the Epsom salts you were mentioning. It's actually a recipe for soap scum is Epsom salts and castile soap.
Yes. So is it safe or effective to combine OxyClean, which is, I think it's a peroxide-based cleaner, with Dr. Bronner's soap?
Yeah, so OxyClean is a brand name for oxygen bleach. And oxygen bleach is, as you said, a combination of hydrogen peroxide and washing soda. But it's in a powdered form. So hydrogen peroxide, which is H2O2, so it has one extra oxygen molecule, or atom rather, than water. The way that it cleans is that extra oxygen quickly falls off the molecule. It's very unstable, which is why when it's liquid, it always comes in that opaque brown bottle, because it's unstable when exposed to light and air. And so in a powdered form, it holds its structure until it dissolves in water, and then it releases that oxygen. Now, in the process of releasing that oxygen, it grabs hold of stains and lifts them away, which is how it cleans. The issue with combining castile soap or any soap with oxygen bleach directly is it speeds up that reaction, and therefore there's not as much time that the oxygen can find the stains and lift them. So it's not unsafe, but it isn't as effective as if you soak your laundry, do a pre-soak with the oxygen bleach, the OxyClean, let the oxygen do its thing with a little more time to work, and then go ahead, because eventually, as you said, the oxygen's gone, and then you've got H2O, which is water, and then add your soap at that point. It'll be a more effective process than combining everything all together.
Awesome. And what is your favorite cleaning combination or cleaning task, and why?
Well, my favorite cleaning task, I actually really enjoy laundry. I enjoy it partially because I am so thankful for modern laundry appliances. I just think about, my counterparts 100, 200 years ago and keeping laundry clean. I couldn't even imagine. Well, obviously, our standards would change. We wouldn't wash things every time, which you shouldn't do anyways, because it wears down your clothes. But we wouldn't wash things as often. We would put up with a little bit more wear on things. But nonetheless, I'm just very thankful that I have a washing machine, and I have a dryer. I'm very thankful I have solar electricity, so it's all free and all of that. And then I just really like the process of folding, and I actually enjoy ironing because it's very cathartic. You can get all the wrinkles out. So I do enjoy that one. As far as the solutions that I most enjoy, I really like chemistry. And so the soft scrub recipe that I have, which is utilizing the reaction between baking soda and vinegar combined with soap, follow the recipe on that one, because the order and the measurements really matter, or else you are going to make gunk. I think that's really fun. I love seeing that bubbly reaction, and then the soft scrubs are really nice consistency. So that's one of my favorite ones.
That's awesome. Yeah, I actually used to be in antique shops, and you would see commodes, and you would see bedpans, and you would know that was what they did back then. And like that's like a whole nother level of, yes, we have bathrooms and showers.
Yes. Yes.
And running water.
You could use the
I
same
can't
rationale for like, I love cleaning my toilet because I'm so glad I have one, you know?
Exactly. So please tell us the story. You can be as briefly or as detailed as you would like of how your grandfather started the soap business and how it has survived in what I would say are very unlikely ways.
Yeah, so I mean, I do think this is another book that could be written, is just the family history, the company history. No announcement there. It's just something I'm like, wow, there's a bigger story to tell. I do tell an abbreviated version of it in the book, and I've written other articles about it. So my grandfather's journey, his family, as you had mentioned, were soap makers in Germany, German Jewish descent. And he actually left Germany in 1929. So it was prior to the really bad time there. The family and the factory there did not survive the war. Anybody who didn't leave was killed. And so he left in 1929 to come to America. His reasons for leaving were actually that he didn't get on real well with his dad and with his uncles who were running the soap company there. They were businessmen. They really just wanted to make soap and the products that they made. My grandfather also had this worldview that they felt was getting in the way of the business. And it was this worldview that, I mean, Germany was not great between the wars. It was actually pretty terrible after World War I. And so there was still a lot of tension, a lot of hatred, a lot of resentment between ethnicities, between religions. And my grandfather had this worldview that said, look, there may be differences in these things, but we have a whole lot more in common than we have differentiating us. So we need to lean more into the commonalities than we do into the differences. Well, his dad and uncles didn't really appreciate that being brought into their workplace. They thought he was just creating trouble where there didn't need to be any. And so my grandfather decided to leave Germany and come to America with his mission, his vision, and his message. So he came to the United States in 1929. And he worked as a chemist in various soap making operations for quite some time. And then the rise of World War II, both his parents perished in concentration camps. His wife actually died in the United States, but in a mental institution, which, he also felt a lot of injustice there. And so he really was even more impassioned about this vision of world peace. And he called it the moral ABC. It was the foundation, the basics, the elementary principles of what people have in common. And so he would speak on this topic. And whoever would listen to him, colleges, civic organizations, people on the street, and whenever people would stop to hear him and spend some time there, he would thank them. He was so appreciative that he would give them a bottle of the Castile soap that was scented with peppermint oil that he was making. It was his family's recipe, and he felt, was giving them part of himself. Well, eventually the soap got a little more of a reputation than his message, and he noticed that people would stay just until the soap got distributed, and then they would head out. And so that's where he got the idea to put his message on the label, which is why the Dr. Bronner's label to this day is so covered in philosophy. If you read it, and you have to have all 5 quarts now to get of the 5 quarts he had in his lifetime, because they all have different parts of his writing on them, to get the full message. So that's how the soap company started. It wasn't a business operation. It wasn't like I have a product to sell. It was I have a message to get out there. I happen to know how to make soap, and here we go. He also made health products. He had some mineral supplements and some food products. All of them had parts of his writing on them. And so that's how the company got started. It was rough for him in the 40s, 50s. People weren't really interested in this message of peace. But then the 60s hit, and the countercultural movement kind of found him. And he had been saying for a long time what they just discovered, which was, return to nature using natural ingredients, as well as this message of peace. And things took off for him after that. He was embraced by the hippie culture of the 60s and the 70s, and really single-handedly built quite a good business operation, even though his passion always was that label and wanting to talk to people about the ideas that were on it.
Oh, awesome. And then what do you think your grandfather would think of what his descendants have done with the simple company he founded?
He would definitely have some suggestions. He was a man of many ideas, undoubtedly. But I think he would be glad that we have maintained this vision of being not only a business, but also an activist company. My grandfather wrote constant letters to, or telegrams and everything, to anybody he could think of, presidents, leaders of any sort, that to encourage them in his message of peace. And he had other topics that were of great interest to him. He was very passionate about anti-fluoridation of the water supply. And that was another topic that he wrote about a lot. He thought that was a way of mass medicating the populace, and that was irresponsible and dangerous. Anyhow, so he had his visions and passions unrelated to soap making, and we have the same thing today. I mean, definitely about connecting across our ethnic and religious and cultural divides, also about taking care of the earth and advocating for it, but many other ways of giving voice to people who don't have a very strong voice, marginalized populations, whether because of lifestyle or ethnicity or socioeconomic levels or whatever. And so we do a lot on the activist side. We have a massive component of our company that is solely focused on charitable work and activism. So I think he would like that, and I think he'd be glad the company was still around. I think he would definitely have some suggestions of things that could be done differently, because he, as I said, was a person of many ideas.
Because I know, I don't remember, it was, I think it was one of your brothers had been involved with trying to get psychedelics approved as a treatment, which ended up, I believe that happened. And so now like people are starting to use them in experiments and stuff like that. And that's really awesome that you guys did that too. And a lot of the and also some of the other stuff that you were talking about in your book with the coconuts, because in most places the people who harvest the coconuts are not paid fairly. They're not paid a livable wage and stuff like that. So you guys have, if you want to talk about a little bit about that, that would be great too.
Sure. Yeah. So there have been several stages to our journey of making sure that our business practices are not harming the world or the people in it, or inhabitants of any kind in it. And so initially that meant that we wanted to certify our major ingredients organic, which we did. And that was its own journey, because there was no organic standard for personal care in 2000 when we did that. I wasn't involved in the company at the time, but my brother David was, and he went toe to toe with the USDA organic standard and said, you may have only used this for food, but we're going to use it for soap. And so that was a journey. But even before we were done with that battle, we knew that organic wasn't enough, because organic doesn't address anything about labor, human labor, or animal welfare. And so even before we'd gotten the organic thing all figured out, we knew we were going to have to pursue fair trade. And in 2005, the company made the commitment to source all of its major ingredients from fair trade operations. Well, the problem with that is that there wasn't a source of fair trade coconut oil in the volume that we needed it. We needed a lot. We didn't just want to buy coconut oil that we can find. We wanted it to be fair trade. So we ended up founding our own sister companies. The first one was in Sri Lanka, and that came out of the recovery from the tsunami that struck at the end of 2004, we had some of our team members that were involved in a group that was helping with the recovery efforts. And Gera Lasson, who's now our vice president of special ops, he realized that there was this untapped resource of coconut farms in Sri Lanka that had no path to market. And he ended up, we ended up buying a mill there. It was a decrepit mill, and restoring it, and then working with farmers to help them certify organic and fair trade. We don't own farmland. We are not farmers. We own the mill, or we own part of the mill. And so Surrendipal was our first fair trade operation to make sure that we could supply ourselves, but they supply other companies as well with fair trade coconut oil and other coconut products. It's an amazing operation. I highly encourage people to check out the video called Journey to Surrendipal. I've gotten to go see the operation in Sri Lanka, and it's so well run, very stable, growing at max capacity. In fact, I mean, it's always producing or looking for more farmers to certify to produce more coconut oil and other coconut products. And then we now have a second coconut operation in Samoa. Surrenda Coco Samoa, I think is how that name ended up. Surrenda means blessed in Sinhalese, which is the language of Sri Lanka. And so we have that second operation in Samoa. And then similar journey with palm oil. Definitely a topic people are very aware of, the problems about palm oil production. Well, we didn't want to be part of that. Palm oil is a fantastic ingredient, very versatile, but not if it's produced at great cost to the environment and to the inhabitants. And so the palm oil journey led us to the founding of Surrenda Palm, which is in Ghana in Western Africa. And once again, we own the mill. We work with smallholder family farms, helping them certify. It's a very expensive and tedious process and long process. And that one is growing tremendously as well to supply our palm oil needs, but also other companies. So it's always taking the next step. We are never done. We're always seeing, oh, there's this, further work that we need to do. From one mountaintop, we always see the next one.
And then, your grandfather had the corporate phone in his home. How many calls did he get every day?
He was always on the phone. He was hours every day. And when people see this number on the soap bottle, I mean, we know that some people probably called it as a prank, like, who is this Dr. Bronner? And they'd get him and they'd hear, because he was so eager to talk to anyone who would engage with him about the ideas on the label. And so, I mean, number a day, I don't know, but I know that it was hours, and that he really was all in. Nobody got a flippant answer or a quick answer. He really wanted to hear where they were and help them to step forward. And so he actually had multiple phones in his living room. And so he was blind for my entire life. He went blind, or fully blind, by 1970 with degrading vision for decades before then. The last color he could see was red. And so his phones were red, so he could easily, find them and see them. And we have pictures here and there of him on a red phone. You can also tell the last things he wrote were in red because he could see that. So, yeah.
Awesome. And I know that in the book you had told the story of the woman who called him, and I think she was like undergoing depression or something like that, and he told her, clean your house from top to bottom and call me back.
Yep.
And she felt better after she did that. I think
yeah.
like he ended up helping her, which was great.
Yeah.
So what is the most important piece of advice you would give to someone who has been using chemical cleaners all of their life, who is ready to start using green cleaning principles?
Right. Well, when you're just starting, you need to do it one step at a time, because if you for whatever reason, like you want to go green and you go to your cleaning cabinet, you throw everything away. Well, you still need to keep your house clean and you still need to live. And so you're probably going to get overwhelmed and just say, oh, it's too much hassle. Let me go buy what I had before. So instead, I do encourage people to do one thing at a time, change one product at a time. It won't take that long, honestly, because there's a lot of overlap. For one thing, the whole marketing machine that we have convinces us we need different products for every surface and for every room. We don't. We don't. It's the same stuff on the surfaces. And as long as your cleaner is mild and it's not going to eat, certain substances, then you can use the same thing for different products. So start with one product, but changing it out, but you'll probably find that whatever you use to change it will be something you can use for the next product as well. I think it's very important to be motivated properly. You can't be motivated by guilt. You can't be motivated by fear, because both of those won't last. You'll just get tired of them, or you'll feel better, and then you've lost your motivation. I think it's most important to be motivated by information. So I want people to know how soap works so that they can trust it. And that soap, which is a very simple and very mild substance, but very effective, removes things from surfaces. We've gotten caught up in this idea that we need to kill things. We don't. Number one, we don't need to kill them. We just need to get rid of them. And number two, we actually aren't going to be successful in killing them. We don't live in a sterile environment. And as soon as you start killing things, things are going to adapt and be even more resilient to being killed. And so if killing is your only, strategy, then you're ultimately going to fail. This is why we have antibiotic resistance, because the bacteria is evolving to withstand our attempts to eradicate it. It's why staph infections are becoming so much harder to treat. The World Health Organization has identified misuse or overuse of antimicrobial substances in the home as a cause of antibiotic resistance. So I want people to learn how soap works so you can trust it, and then clean your house with soap, not with antibacterial. Soap is not antibacterial, because antibacterials work by killing and soap works by removing. Soap has the ability to bond to oil and to water at the same time and carry it away. So go read an article. I do have one called How Soap Works. And then just wash your house with soap. Put it in a spray bottle, dilute it and put it in a spray bottle. Put it in your mop bucket. The other thing you're going to have to get used to when you're just starting out is that things are going to smell different. Not bad, just different. We have this idea that in order for my house to be clean, it's got to be so nose scouring, makes your eyes water. That's not the case. If something is clean, that means there's nothing there. And if there's nothing there, then it's not going to smell like anything. So that's a little bit of a psychological change we have to make, of, getting used to a different smell of clean. But if you know why, then that helps you to overcome the fact that, the emotion might say, that's not what clean smells like. But your mind then can say, aha, but if it doesn't smell like anything, then that's the smell of clean. So other easy, simple ways to get started: open your windows, let in fresh air. Our houses are sealed so tightly in the name of efficiency that we don't let things out. Now I get, temperature, we don't want to let out our heat, we don't want to let out our air conditioning, but we're trapping in so much cooking fumes, outgassing from textiles, our furnishings, our fabrics, our paint, our breath, and the breath of everybody in the house, dust, which is often made up of skin cells and animal, insect parts and insect poop. Like, we've got to get rid of this stuff. Open your house up, flush the air out. Plants alone can't do it. Even air purifiers. I mean, if you can't open your window, an air purifier is a good idea, but it's better to open the window. So Little steps like this, it's not that complicated if you understand why you need to be able to trust that green cleaners work. It's not about getting used to dirt, not at all. It's just trusting that you don't need these really harmful, harsh substances to be clean.
Okay, awesome. And so I guess you just answered the next question.
Sorry.
That's okay. So I wanted to ask, which I didn't actually put on the list, was
That's okay.
how did this come into the next generation? I remember reading it was kind of convoluted and an interesting way that it kind of ended up being that now the next generation did take over the soap company, and it wasn't always clear that that would be the case.
Right. I mean, the soap company was my grandfather. It was, I mean, it's named after him. It was his life's work. He never had an off. You know, anytime you talk to him, it was talking about the message, about the bottle, about the company, about the soap. Um, he was my only grandparent, and so like all grandparent memories are Dr. Bronner. And so the idea that the company could live beyond him, you know, wasn't a given necessarily. But he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease right around 1990, and you know, so a very slow decline after that, which had its blessing in that we had time to ask and answer the question, you know, is the company worth continuing? And the answer, you know, it came to was yes. And so my dad, who was a chemist by trade, he didn't work for or with his dad, my grandfather. He did oversee the soap making almost as a side. He worked for another company and he was a chemist in his own right, and he was an inventor as well. But he decided that he would take on the running of Dr. Bronner's. And so we were up in Los Angeles, which is about 2 hours north of San Diego, where my grandfather was. I'm the youngest. And so as I was finishing up high school in the early 90s, my dad was getting more and more involved with the running of the company. He would drive down to San Diego a couple times a week. And with the idea that he would eventually step into the presidency. Which he did. And then by the time I graduated and went off to college, they moved down to San Diego. And so that was the plan. My grandfather was in his decline. He wasn't able to run things anymore. My dad had stepped in. My uncle Ralph, my dad's brother, he was in Milwaukee, always was in Milwaukee. He was a teacher, middle school English teacher. He was involved, you know, from afar, a very interested in as he could, and he was like the sales force of the company, the marketing, the everything. He would go visit health stores and spread the message, but he was in Milwaukee, and so that was the plan. My dad was taking over the company, and he probably had the full running of the company by 1993, 94. My grandfather passed away on March 7th of 1997. And then my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer in June of 1997. So the plan quickly fell apart because my dad was not going to be there. And so in the summer of 1997, we had a family meeting. So, you know, my Uncle Ralph is in Milwaukee, and he has 3 sons. My dad has 3 kids, me and my 2 brothers. And we just had a meeting, like, who's going to run this? Is anybody going to run this? It wasn't on our radar. I was still in college. My other brother was just graduated and had a teaching commitment in Japan. You know, my cousins, like one's in the Navy, one's also overseas, one's a teacher in Scotland. Like we all had our plan because we already had a plan. My dad was going to run the company. Well, David, my oldest brother, he was in Boston working as a mental health counselor. He was 24. At the time, he had a newborn, and who actually was born the same day my grandfather died on March 7th of 1997. He had already been feeling a tug that my grandfather's vision was really resonating with him, both the business side and the activism side. So he was already thinking. So David decided to come back, and it wasn't just going to be he was going to work for the company. he basically was going to learn how to run the company. So he moved his family back to San Diego, or to San Diego. He'd never lived there, and spent a year working with my dad and my mom, learning what he could. And then my dad passed away in June of 1998. And so then it was my mom, who'd always been by my dad's side. She's very financially savvy, math teacher by training, but she's still chief financial officer to this day. And so is David and my mom, my Uncle Ralph from afar. And then one by one, and my brother Mike came back from Japan, where he'd been teaching, and he got involved and is president now. And then my husband came. We were in North Carolina. So, one at a time, we all got back involved. But those late 90s years, I mean, not only like relationship wise was there a lot of transition, life plans, but financially, I mean, it is really hard to pass a family business down in America. You have to be very savvy. I mean, not only is it difficult to take one person's vision and transfer it to another generation, but the tax burden is not in your favor. And so my grandfather, who did not like navigating by the IRS's guidelines, had made no plan to transfer the company, which means there's a 50% estate tax. And, the company was under that when my dad passed away. Now, it didn't, because my mom was still alive, it wasn't quite the same scenario. But I mean, it was really rocky financial times getting out from under that tax burden and, navigating that. And it really was once that was taken care of that we could look at things like organic and fair trade, because we had the resources to direct towards that. So yeah, but those were rocky years, and kudos to my mom and to David and to Uncle Ralph for navigating all of that, for being willing, not to make a whole lot of money themselves, because there just wasn't any, and wanted to make sure all the employees were well taken care of and the business could still run and lights could stay on and all that. So that was tough. That was tough.
No, I'm very glad that it actually ended up working out, because I know like there was another company, Aubrey Organics, which was founded by a gentleman, Mr. Aubrey. I forget what his first name is now. And his descendants did not, I don't know what they did, but they, within 10 years after he passed, maybe it was 20 years, their company was bankrupt, and they just sold it to a big company. They sold it to Nutraceutical, who, and oddly enough, the weirdest part was they didn't sell them the formulas. They just sold them the brand. So when you got the conditioner that they created, it was glue paste, not conditioner. It was horrible. This is the worst.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ever. I mean, I knew Aubrey. He and my grandfather and, Tom's of Maine and Burt's Bees, like they were the old guard back when the health industry was non-existent, or was just crunchy, eager, earnest mom and pop stores and eager, earnest brands. They were all in it together. And then one by one, it's the same question. Does anybody want to keep running this company? And if the family doesn't, then, what do you do? So yeah, so far we've still been interested in running the company.
That's awesome.
I think that's not changing.
And I'm just curious to know if you happen to know how to remove balsamic vinegar stains. And if you don't know, and if you could find out, that would be great.
Absolutely. Okay, well, a couple of things with stains. First of all, don't use heat. The only type of stain you'll want to use heat on is a grease stain. But with every other type of stain, it's more likely to set it than remove it. So, and of course, if you can get to it sooner than later, that is also helpful. But I mean, I've got kids, I've got animals. I know that I find stains long after they're dry. But, first off, try to rinse it out. That'll help get any loose stuff off before it gets set in there. But with cold water, rinse it out. If it's a durable fabric that can take it, rub it against itself, because that's the best scrub. If it's a real delicate fabric, don't do that. But rub it against itself. And actually, because the last thing you want to do is spread the stain. So before you get to the rubbing it against itself, see if you can lay the fabric over like a bowl or a bucket so that you just have the stain over that, and take a pitcher of water and hold it up high and pour it right on the stain just to see. You might get lucky. If it's still loose enough, it might just be able to push the stain right through, and it won't spread it. Okay, so try that first. Okay, then do a simple soap or detergent. Don't jump into a stain remover, which can actually degrade the fabric. So put that on there on the wet fabric, let it sit, and then, let it sit for maybe 20 minutes. Rub it together if it can take it, and rinse it out with cold water. Is it still there? If it's a light enough fabric, a light colored fabric, use the oxygen bleach we were talking about earlier. OxyClean or Branch Basics has one. Oxygen bleach is the generic name. Sprinkle that on the stain, and then spray it with, Dr. Bronner's Sal Suds it's actually a detergent. It's not a soap, but it's a mild detergent. If you dilute it at about 50-50, like 1 part Sal Suds, 1 part water, this is way more concentrated than for any other cleaning use. Spray it on the oxygen bleach, let it sit. I don't think I have ever had a stain not come out from that. My daughter brought me a white sweatshirt. I don't know what it was. She's 14, but it looked like Kool-Aid was just down it. Anyhow, this the pouring the water didn't work, but the sprinkling the oxygen bleach on with the Sal Suds, that worked tremendously well, and it's you can't even find the stain anymore. So so those are my strategies. Never dry a stain. That'll set it. So keep at it until you've got it.
In this case, it's actually in a rug, but in the
Oh!
carpet. So it's
I'm sorry.
but
Okay.
that's so interesting that I didn't use hot water because the little steam cleaner device said it would make water hot. But I don't know why it says that, because it doesn't actually do anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just whatever the temperature is. And I ended up using Dr. Bronner's soap, and it's almost gone, but there's like a little tiny bit left.
What
So now I
color
gotta
is the
go
rug?
tack again.
Yeah.
Almost white. It's like ivory.
Okay, then I would actually keep your animals away from it for this purpose, but I would actually do a little sprinkle of oxygen bleach on there and then use the Dr. Bronner's. Oxygen bleach is not toxic, but you still don't want your animals eating it. But yeah, and then use your steam cleaner to make sure you get all the soap out of the carpet. Oftentimes our carpets get dirty real fast because we actually leave cleaner in them, and it holds onto dirt, because that's what soap does. It holds onto dirt. So yeah, try that. And this should,
well, definitely.
should
And then I guess the last question that I had is, what do you remember most about your grandfather?
Never knowing what topic he was going to be on. It was always like he would just get into a particular vein of thought and a particular point, and that was what he wanted to talk to you about. So he would call, and you knew right away who it was, and he would always jump into whatever it was. So it might be, Lisa, you need to learn how to type, because typing is the way of the future. You need to learn how to use a computer. And yes, Grandpa. And so we talk about that for a little bit. Or it might be, Lisa, you need to spend some time working with your hands, because that gives you connection to the common man. I spent 3 years laying bricks. That was when he was actually institutionalized. And it gave me a connection to the common man, which actually I think leads into that story you were mentioning earlier about, cleaning your house. The lady who was distraught and called him, and he said to clean your house. I do think that physical work is extremely therapeutic. And when we are upset or stuck or stressed, I do think that physical work is very helpful. So anyhow, so I just remember that, like, I'd pick up the phone, it was Grandpa, and you never knew what topic he was gonna be on that day. So he just was extremely passionate. And then you had to end every conversation, every phone conversation, with a very fervent all one. And if you didn't say it fervently enough, you had to do it again. And I was pretty soft spoken as a kid, so I really had to channel my my strength to say it fervently enough. So I think he had a soft spot for me. I there's another long story, but at the time I was the only granddaughter, and I think he had a soft spot for me. So yeah,
Oh,
that
that's
was nice.
awesome. And is there anything else that you would like to share that we haven't covered already, or just something that you wanted to add or anything like that?
Well, I always encourage people to, to look at what can be done and to take the next step. And there's always a lot we can't do. There's always a lot of hurdles or things in our way, but looking at that isn't going to get us anywhere. So just look around and find the next thing you can do. Learn something, figure out something. Maybe you've got 20 tasks in front of you that's paralyzing you. Well, just pick one. Pick one and do that. And I'm talking to myself and saying this because I frequently get paralyzed by having too much to do. But I do think, doing what we can and taking the next step, one step forward, just can really make progress when we really feel stuck.
That's awesome. So it was really great speaking with you, and I really liked your insights and your family stories. I think people will really like that. That was really awesome. But I'm really happy that you took the time to meet with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a joy to talk to you.
Oh, you as well. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks so much. You too. Take care
Thank
now.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.